Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. This time we're going to be giving you a full video review of the Fanatic Bee board. This is a multi-sport board, mainly orientated around foiling, but it means you can SUP surf foil it, you can wing foil it, you can windsurf foil it, and you can normal traditional SUP surf it as well. The Bee is actually a replacement for the Fanatic Stubby Multi-sport board that we actually did a full review on a few years ago, and it's got some definite pros over that Stubby board. The Bee first came to market actually a year ago with the 7/8 size, and this year you can also get an 8'2" size as well. In this review we have been using the 7/8. The full specifications for this is 30.78 inches wide, it's approximately 4 inches thick when we've measured it. It's got a volume of 120 litres, and the weight of this board weighed 10.19 kilograms. This board comes complete with foot straps and fins, but no foil, at retails at €1,649 or £1,399. And the bigger 8'2" version is 31.5 inches wide, and it comes in at 140 litres. The construction of the board is available it's finished off in its vector net construction. The vector net itself is actually the netting you see around the rails of the board. The internal core is the EPS foam core. You've got multiple layers of glass, you've got wood under the standing area to give you great impactness, and the multiple layers of glass and wood do stand up to making it a very strong and hard wearing board. This board comes in at 10.19 kilos, as I said, so it does weigh a little bit, but bear in mind there is a lot of fixings on here. You have got obviously the foil box at the bottom there, which is 2 US foil boxes, very standard now. You have a inbuilt windsurf UJ track in here, and you've got all of the foot strap inserts as well, and of course you've got your 3 thruster fin box setup as well. Before we crack into the design of this board, let's talk about the big standout, which has got to be the look of it. Without a doubt, this is the most stylish and eye-catching composite board that we have seen in probably, to be honest, the last 2 years. As soon as you unpack this and pull it out of the bag, it is incredibly eye-catching and well finished off as well, with those graphics and how they faded the colours through and the pink pin line around the board. Yes, if pink and orange isn't really your colourway, this isn't going to be your board, but it does look really, really good. So Fanatic, they always make good looking products, but this is one of their standout eye-catching boards that we've ever seen. This board has been completely redesigned by Sky Solback. In the last 2 years, he's done a lot of designs on the Fanatic range around a lot of their foil boards. Big differences between this board and the previous year's Stubby board that we used. These boards are much shorter and more compact. So they're wider overall, they're shorter, there's less swing weight, they're much more designed for specifically foil disciplines. This board itself has a relatively wide nose up at the front. It has a large amount of width towards the back of the board, and it's finished off with a double wing tail to swallowtail. So what that is it's a good way of reducing the amount of width at the back of the board, but having a wing tail at the back of the board helps drive your turns a little bit faster and tighter, because it helps the release of the water off of the rail. And a swallowtail as well helps the boards like this sort of shapes with their wider overall outline, helps them become more maneuverable, and it really works well with the boards that are trying to be more compact and shorter but still have a good amount of width to them. The Stubby board that we used a few years ago did have a similar characteristics in the tail shape, but the double wing tail is different with this board compared to that one. Overall, this board is a little bit thicker in general than that original Stubby. The Stubby that we rode originally was an 8'7", but they're exactly the same volume. So they showed you how much more volume they got into this shorter board. This board is a little bit wider than the Stubby that we used, which was around 29 inches wide. But that extra thickness overall and really towards the back gives you a little bit more stability when you're standing on it. And the nose shape has a lot more thickness to it as well than the original Stubby, which is going to help with your foiling disciplines, which we'll speak about in a minute. Turning the board over, you've got a very simple design on the bottom of the board. You have a single concave going right down the middle of the board. A concave is great at sort of holding the water and forcing the water back towards the fins or the foil, and it's going to help accelerate the board, make it move faster on a wave or faster as it gets up on the foil than a board that at this width with a flat bottom. The board comes as standard with a 3 thruster fin setup. That's 3 fins of the same size, they're all 5-inch. The good thing about multi-fin boxes is it means if you have other fins, maybe you have FCS fins or you have some futures fins, you can actually put them in this board as well. So they take a wide selection of fin boxes in the multi-fin box. So 3 fins as standard, and you get your foot straps again as standard with the package price. So what is the Fanatic Bee like on the water, and what does it compare like to the previous Stubby, and maybe why did they bring out this new board and stop the Stubby Multi-sport board? Well, let's look again at the previous Fanatic Stubby that we reviewed a few years ago. The Fanatic Stubby was a surf SUP board that became a multi-sport board. It does and did work really well in the waves because it has a much more thinned down tail, less thickness overall. We really like that board when we were SUP surfing. It gives you a lot of performance, and a lot of you out there are still enjoying the Stubby shapes for your SUP surfing. And when it came to foiling, it was a fun board to get you up on foiling. You could get into wing foiling, you could get into windsurf foiling. I mean, to be honest, I don't even think we were winning foiling when we actually reviewed that board. Originally, it was just SUP surf foiling and windsurf foiling. The downside to that board is it had a little bit more rocker, and it didn't really help you get up onto the foil as easily as it could do. It's more of a SUP surf focused board that became a foiling multi-sport board. This is where the Bee answers and ticks all the boxes that the original Stubby didn't tick. This Bee is designed for SUP surfing and foiling at the same time, so very different from the original Stubby just being a surf shape in general. So let's start off with the foiling disciplines you can do with this board. So it's a windsurf foiling board, it's a wing foiling board, and it's a SUP surf foiling board. We didn't actually use this one windsurfing, and we didn't actually take it foil surfing this time, but we did use this SUP surfing and we did use this wing foiling as well. Between those two disciplines, you get a very good idea of how the board reacts across all disciplines. When it comes to using this board with a foil, it's definitely clear to see it's much more user-friendly than the original Stubby. Being shorter, it's got less swing weight, it's much easier to get up onto the foil, and the less rocker this board has compared to the original Stubby makes it much more efficient at its length as well. The foil box itself is placed in exactly the same place as the original Stubby, and there wasn't really any problems with where that was placed. The rails themselves on the Bee are a little bit softer, and they do allow you to go up and down on the foil, especially when you're learning whether you're doing your SUP surf foiling or your wing foiling. They're going to allow you to go up and down and touch the board on the water surface and it not catch you or slow you down too much, which is really a key point when you're getting into any foiling disciplines. Obviously these boards are bigger base boards, and they aren't going to be as reactive and as lively as shorter foil boards are, whether you're surfing with them or winging with them. So when it comes to getting up onto the foil, whether you're using it for a wing or in the surf, it's a little bit smoother and less reactive compared to the shorter base boards. If you're obviously a more of an intermediate or an advanced foiler, you're going to be used to how to pump and initiate a foil and get yourself flying. With a board like this, you've got more board, you've got more length, you've got more swing weight, so it's going to be a little bit more subdued. It's not going to be so extreme. But having said that, when the person that's going to be buying this board probably isn't going to be doing those types of efficient pumping techniques to get up on the foil early. So they're going to be maybe generating more speed with the wing, getting more speed up overall, and then the foil will naturally just lift out on the water. Or if you're catching a wave, you're just going to be paddling into the wave, letting the wave generate the speed, and then naturally just come up onto the foil. To be honest, these types of boards do work really well with the bigger base foils. The more area you have on the foils, the longer the fuselage and the bigger the tail wing, they do work much better with these types of boards. Because they're bigger boards in general, they're going to allow you to get up and riding in smaller waves and up and riding with your wing in lighter winds, and then when you want to progress and move around the board, jibing, tacking, those bigger wings underneath the water are going to give you way more stability, and they really do work well with these style boards. We were using this with the Fanatic Aero 2000, and it is a really great combination foil for getting you out, getting your first flights very smooth and easy to use. I can't recommend that enough. If you're looking at this style board, don't look at a foil unless you're particularly light, under sort of 1500 square centimeters for your front foil wing. If you're between 70 to 95 kilos, you've got to be looking at the bigger foils, the 1800s or the 2000s. They're going to really make this board work really, really well, and just going to give you way more of an enjoyable and a quicker learning curve into your foiling disciplines. One thing that is definitely worth mentioning, and Fanatic have always done it on all their boards, really nice big deck pad, goes right towards the front of the board. You've got loads of space to walk around the board, so if you're getting into your wing foiling and you want to move your feet around, whether you're off the foil or on the foil, maybe you're trying to get into your jibes, switching your feet around, having a nice big area with a nice large deck pad is really comfortable to use. You could use foot straps for this when you want to use wing foiling, but we really preferred to have the nice big open deck so you can get used to moving your feet around. But the foot strap layout does look very much the same as the original Fanatic Stubby we used, and we had that windsurfing and the foot straps worked really well. But generally with foiling, you might want to be moving your feet around the board a little bit more on this size board opposed to the smaller boards. And having a full windsurf mast track on this board will allow you to move your windsurf rig forward and back to really trim yourself properly when you're foiling, and that's pretty important when it comes to using multi-sport boards. You need to be able to have quite a lot of movement to get the board set up in the sweet spot, because you've got to put, if you're talking about windsurfing, you've got to bring the foil into the equation, your body weight into the equation, your ability, and then your windsurf rig, and then the amount of wind you're going to be riding in as well. So there's a lot of stuff to think about. So having these movements in the foil box and the windsurf track here is going to allow you to really nail down and tune your board effectively. If we're talking about moving this board into the waves with your foil, I see no problems at all with using this board to get you into SUP surf foiling. You're going to have a good amount of width there. It's not too long, as I said, it's shorter than the old Stubbies, so it's going to be easier to get up onto the foil. A long board is going to give you a bit more glide and a bit more speed. As soon as you're getting up around 8'5" or 8'5" plus, in the surf with the foils, the boards do become a little bit more of a handful to use, because you've got quite a long board there to balance and trim as you start to get up on the foil. So if you're looking for this board as a SUP surf foil board, it's going to be a nice entry level to get you into SUP surf foiling. But what is it like to use for SUP surfing? Take away the foils, old school, traditional, put your fins in it, and how does it ride? Well, this is where you will feel the board is a little bit heavier to use, because you're going to be punching out and pushing out of the waves. You're paddling very much on the water instead of flying on top of it. You will feel that extra bit of weight. The board isn't that long, so it hasn't got a huge amount of glide to it. It is still very wide for its length, so it's nice and stable, so it's got a good amount of stability there. But you are going to have to move yourself back if you want to punch out over waves, which is sort of what we'd expect for a board with a rocker line and shape like this underneath the board. The board is very responsive and very maneuverable on the flat water, so it's very easy to turn around and catch a wave. When it comes to riding and catching waves, you're going to have to put a little bit more effort in with your paddle stroke, again because of the weight of the board, but as soon as the wave starts to pick you up, that weight is actually going to be a help, and it's going to help you get on that wave. As soon as the wave builds up and the momentum of the wave, if you get yourself back on the board does react really well, it comes around really well, and it turns quite nicely off the top because it has got the double wingtail and the swallow tail at the back of the board. If you're using it in bigger waves or faster waves, you will find the board will start to bounce around a little bit, and definitely doesn't work as well in the surf as the original Stubby would do. But remember, that Stubby had a much more thinned down tail shape in its thickness, and it was more designed around SUP surfing. This is the true multi-sport board, so you are going to have a bit more of a compromise, especially when it comes to SUP surfing. But remember, this board is almost 31 inches wide, and surfing any board, especially as the waves get faster or bigger, that is where wider boards will tend to bounce. But really, if you want to throw your turns around and you're a bit more of an experienced SUP surfer, you're going to find the weight of the board, the swing weight of the board, is going to slow those turns down a little bit. So they're not going to offer you as much performance again as a board like the original Stubby would do. So who's going to be looking at this board, and who would we recommend to look at the Bee, especially in the 7/8 size? Well, a lot of people are going to look at this board, there's no doubt about that. There's going to be a large weight range of people that are going to look at this board. Fanatic say 65 to 85 kilograms. I'd agree with that, but I'd probably say if you're a little bit more confident on your footwork or standing on boards, maybe you've been paddleboarding a few more years, you could probably go up to 90 kg, maybe even a tiny bit more, because there's still a lot of volume and width to the board, so it gives you a good stable platform. And definitely if you're not looking at maybe going SUP surfing so much, and you really want to just look at your maybe wing foiling discipline or getting it as a big foiling board in general, I think maybe you could even be a little bit heavier as well. It's got a good amount of length there, so it's still going to get you up on the foil nice and early. For SUP surfing, you're definitely an intermediate or a beginner SUP surfer. It's going to work better in the smaller waves, as I said, because of the extra width. It doesn't handle itself so well in the faster, bigger waves, but definitely waves up to waist to maybe shoulder high, small mushy breaks that don't have loads of speed or power. The Bee is going to work really well for you for there. If you're a lighter paddler, you could get on and wing this, you could get out and SUP surf this. Definitely, yeah, 65 kg, it's going to be absolutely fine. For wingers, I know a lot of you are going to be looking at this board for winging because it's a very popular discipline at the moment. A lot of you are getting into winging. It is a great entry to get into foiling, because unless you have a boat or have a friend with a boat, it's sort of much harder to learn to foil straight by going SUP surf foiling. So winging is a better option to get your first flights. And this sort of board, again, coupled with a bigger base foil front wing, it works really well. It's very comfortable, very easy, very smooth. And it is the board I would recommend for a lot of people who want to get into winging, especially if you're looking at doing the multi-sport disciplines. Maybe you're even a windsurfer, you want to give some windsurf foiling a go as well. Definitely the Bee, this one, the 7/8 or the 8/2, is a strong board that you should definitely be looking at. Other things to talk about with Fanatic, and also looking at the cons as well. It's really good to see Fanatic are doing a lot more work for their climate. The boards are carbon neutral now. All the packaging that comes with the Fanatics are all wrapped in paper. And we look forward to hearing and seeing about the materials that they're putting into the boards and how they're packing them into the future. Fanatic started making boards over 40 years ago now. They all started back in the day with windsurf boards, then they got SUPs, then the wings came out, then the foils, the foil boards, paddles. There's loads of stuff that they make, and loads of you are really happy with the Fanatic stuff, and we hear lots of Fanatic feedback from you all out there, so please keep that coming. So now let's talk about cons and things to be aware of for the Fanatic Bee for 2022. Well, the weight of the board, it definitely weighs a little bit more, and it would be nice to have a board that's a bit lighter. But I do understand it's got the multiple foil boxes. Obviously, you've got the windsurf track, you've got the foot strap plugs, you've got the multiple foil multi boxes at the back for your fins. So there's a lot of stuff in this board, and it does seem to be a fairly tough construction. So it's a heavier board, but it's to be expected. Definitely in the surf, the board doesn't surf as well as the Stubby. Again, it's something to be aware of. If you are maybe looking for mainly a SUP surfing board and you want to give foiling a go, then you could maybe find an older Stubby, to be honest, and that is a slightly better board. But if you're thinking, I want to give winging a go, I'm interested in a little bit of SUP surfing, but I'm not really worried about the performance too much of that, and I want to obviously give SUP foiling a go as well, then this is the better board over the Stubby. It's a much more user-friendly than that original Stubby. But maybe some of you out there that are just looking more for a surf board that does a little bit of foiling, maybe find yourself an older Stubby. The only other negative, and it's probably one of the biggest things to be aware about, is you have got 3 nice fins with this board, but if you're coming into it as more of a beginner intermediate level and you're talking about SUP surfing here, the board doesn't track as well in a straighter line, and having a bigger fin at the back of the board would help that a lot. You could probably track yourself down a fin that has got a more area, but it's a shame that Fanatic didn't actually put a single US box in the back of the board that you could put a bigger fin in. I understand, again, that would have added extra weight onto the board, but it would have allowed more people at beginner, intermediate level to be able to paddle in a straighter line when they catch their waves, especially at the more beginner level. Just another thing to think about, another thing to play into the equation when you're thinking about getting this board. But in general, the Bee does deliver. It does what it says it should do, and it does it all pretty well. I would definitely say if you're getting into winging, SUP foiling, and giving windsurf foiling a little bit of a go, and you want to also keep the board as a shorter, more compact surf shape, the Bee is the one to be looking at, and it is definitely one of the boards you need to focus on as a multi-sport board and have that on your list for sure. And to be honest, the way the board looks and at the price point it's sitting at, I do think you get a hell of a lot of board for the money. If you've owned the Bee, if you've used one last year, maybe you've even used the previous Stubby Multi-sport board as well, we would love to know your feedback and thoughts. Get them in the comments below, get them on the full SUPboarder website, and make sure you get involved in the full SUPboarder customer reviews. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on another video real soon.